It was a cold Monday evening during my 35-year-old year, and I was standing in a grueling 10-hour long queue at a gas station just waiting to get fuel. At that time, there was a mere $263 left in my account. The pressure of life was weighing heavily on me as my rent had just been adjusted upward, and my old car urgently needed new brake discs, which cost a whopping $400. I simply had no power left to bear this kind of torture anymore. So I practically chose a pack of chips for $4.29, along with a bottle of drink for $2.19. Then I secretly calculated in my head and prayed that nothing would happen to my car. Looking at the lottery grand prize pool, which had accumulated to $412 million, a number I usually wouldn't even touch, I suddenly had a very strange feeling that night. It was a feeling of hope, yet it was more hopeless than anything. It felt like someone had thrown you an obviously short rope, but you still reached out to grab it. I put down $2 and told the cashier to print a quick pick ticket. He printed it out and didn't even look at me once. I silently slipped the lottery ticket into my wallet, went back home, tossed it onto the cluttered kitchen table, and fell asleep on the sofa, completely unaware that my destiny was about to change. 2 days later, I was sitting on the sofa when I accidentally saw the lottery numbers appearing on the screen. My hand started to shake as I pulled out the ticket to compare them. The 16 numbers on the screen were completely harmonious with the ticket in my hand. I didn't scream or jump up. I just sat there for a very long time, trying to digest a reality that was simply too massive and lacked any reference. $412 million. Reading it out loud sounded like a fake, like a plot bridge in a movie. That night, I couldn't sleep at all. I just lay in bed staring at the ceiling, constantly transferring the lottery ticket into a book, then to a sealed bag, then into a box, and then taking it back out. I started to get anxious, terrified of losing that single piece of paper. Early the next morning, I called in sick for leave and searched about the lottery online. The first result recommended hiring a lawyer. The second was to never tell anyone. And the third was a list of past winners who had been killed or self destructed. I closed the page in fear. I had become a millionaire, but sitting in my kitchen, I felt nothing but terror. To protect myself, I found a lawyer dedicated to high quality assets, trusts, and asset protection. His office was located on the 22nd floor of a building, an environment where his hourly wage of $600, which would have made me dizzy just 2 weeks ago, now lost its meaning. The lawyer explained the company structure and the concept of setting up a blind trust. I nodded my head and pretended to understand, but in reality, I only grasped about 30% of it. The only thing I could clearly realize was that if I stepped forward publicly to claim the prize, my life would collapse. Within weeks, my name would be publicly recorded, reporters would be at my door, and strangers who hadn't seen me in 15 years would suddenly appear. After my lawyer set up the trust to receive the prize, we went to the ticket committee office building together. After scanning the ticket, the federal tax was deducted at 37%, and the state tax took another 6 to 8%. My initial $412 million prize, after the one time cash discount and heavy taxes, shrunk to about $118 million. Even though my lawyer had warned me, I still felt like I had been robbed. But this entire dizzying transformation took less than a week. Once the money was in the account, the numbers still didn't feel real. It looked like a typo, as if someone had accidentally pressed a few more keys on a keyboard. At this point, I made a fatal mistake by telling 3 people: my mother, my brother, and my best friend. I strictly told them not to spread the word. However, my mother told her sister, who then revealed it to her school's teaching group. My brother told his wife, and my sister in law immediately posted on social media about blessings and good fortune. It became an open news release. Only my best friend remained as tight lipped as a sealed bottle. Instantly, my phone started to ring off the hook. People I didn't even know and those I was no longer connected with were calling. From an ex boyfriend of an acquaintance to a colleague's husband, everyone claimed to have a great business opportunity and wanted to talk. They all said congratulations and claimed they were happy for me, saying this was what I deserved. But then they would stop, waiting for me to open my mouth and offer money first. A barrage of heartbreaking and shameless requests followed. They asked if I could pay their school fees, cover their mom's medical bills, invest in their restaurant, or buy them a car. All these requests were accompanied by an unspoken premise that I owed the world because the universe gave me this money. I started to turn off my phone, change my number, and avoid my usual spots because every single interaction now revolved around money. One Friday night, I went to my familiar small pub, but the overwhelming kindness of the people there felt too careful and unnatural. It felt as if I were no longer an old regular, but a wealthy guest to be exploited. I could sense their plots in the way the men looked at me, so I left immediately. My email inbox was even worse, filled with letters from strangers telling their tragic stories. A woman said her son needed money for a burial because insurance wouldn't cover it. A man wrote 4 full pages describing how his house was devoured by fire and he only needed $30,000 to start over. A church sent a foundation pamphlet with a handwritten line stating that heaven had placed me in a position to be their helper. I read every single letter because I couldn't control my curiosity, and every letter became a small wound, leaving me feeling guilty and conflicted, even though there was no correct way to respond. To numb the emptiness, I dove into a cycle of reckless spending. I bought a massive house featuring 5 bathrooms, a pool, and a 3 car garage. It was far bigger than my old one, but walking inside, my footsteps only echoed in a quiet and empty space. I bought myself a Mercedes Benz, spent $10,000 on luxury watches, and purchased so many electronic products and furniture items that I had to set up a first class warehouse just to store them all. I began traveling in first class cabins, enjoying fine steak, drinking expensive champagne, and staying in luxury suites priced at $3,000 a night. I chose luxury naturally without ever looking at the price because the people who go to those places never ask about spending. I convinced myself that since I had spent 15 years working hard and breaking my body, I had the right to splurge. However, the double hump of excitement from a $200,000 car only lasted for 3 days. After that, it was just a regular car, and I immediately wanted the next thing. I was chasing an illusion of fulfillment that even money couldn't satisfy. The money I spent seemed sustainable because the numbers were too huge for my brain to perceive any shrinkage. A $200,000 car against a $118 million fortune felt like a drop in the ocean. However, high end living comes with an insidious financial concept known as lifestyle creep and spending expansion. My lawyer introduced me to a wealth management agency. These people wore expensive suits and discussed investment combinations, asset allocation, and risk adjustment. They showed me charts and recommended conservative index funds, bonds, and real estate, telling me that with proper management, my fortune could safely pay out $4 to $5 million every year. They told me I would never have to work again, and my children wouldn't either. I listened, but I didn't follow their advice. Instead, I began investing on my own whims. I gave my brother in law money to open a restaurant. I sponsored my college roommate's technology startup because he promised a venture in marine assets. I invested because it made me feel important and powerful, a feeling that was only possible with money. Ultimately, that restaurant went under in 14 months. The technology startup turned out to be a massive border fraud, and I lost $3.2 million in a matter of 5 minutes. My financial manager had warned me, but I didn't listen. I foolishly thought that having money meant I was smart with money, but I learned the hard way that wealth is a two-way street. Gaining it is slow and expensive, but losing it is incredibly fast. Next, I turned to charity to find some peace of mind. At first, it felt wonderful. I cleared my mother's mortgage, set up an education fund, and donated heavily to a children's hospital. Local newspapers ran glowing reports about me, calling me a kind hearted philanthropist. But almost immediately, every charitable organization came back asking for a double increase. My schedule became completely packed with gala events, parties, and fundraising activities. I would attend a black tie party, listen to someone running a shelter, say they needed $200,000 to get through the winter, and sign a check right then and there. The next morning, three more organizations would visit. I kept giving and giving until the joy of helping was entirely replaced by guilt and obligation. I gave until I discovered a cold, unknowing truth. No matter how much money you have, the world's misery cannot be ended. Before the pressure could completely blow me away, I had to hire a fund manager to handle donations through a formal process of application and decision making. The efficiency was higher, but it became cold and corporate. My life had shifted from simply winning a ticket to running an official bureaucratic structure. By the third year of winning the prize, I was living in a heavily fortified house, driving cars that shielded me from the outside world. My social circle had shrunk into a tiny group of people who were either ultra rich or hired by me: my financial advisor, lawyer, accountant, personal assistant, and fitness coach. These were my only contacts. I trusted them because I paid them, and I wasn't even sure if I could trust anyone who wasn't on my payroll. My old friends were completely gone. They had drifted away gradually because during every meal, every trip, and over every bottle of wine, they expected me to pay because I was the rich man. Eventually, staying around me became an awkward burden, creating a barrier that neither side knew how to fix. My relationship with my brother completely fractured as well. I had given him $500,000 to start a business, but it failed, and he blamed me for not giving him more to save the situation. It became a rock in my chest. I had donated millions to strangers until my hands were weary, yet my own brother described me as selfish. Even dating became a psychological torture. I took a lady to dinner, and she ordered the most expensive dishes, leaving me unable to tell if she just liked the food or was testing the bottom line of my wealth. Another time, I met someone who seemed genuinely sincere until her roommate casually mentioned my asset interests. Realizing she knew everything from the start, I stopped the date immediately to protect myself from further self harm. I had to start seeing a therapist at $400 an hour. I sat in her office talking to someone I paid just to listen without judgment, using money to buy a tiny bit of emotional justice in a world that felt entirely transactional. By the fourth year, I became a prime target for scammers and frivolous lawsuits. A man absurdly claimed that he suffered an accident involving my car and demanded $2 million. Even though it was completely unreasonable and my lawyer eventually settled it, the case cost me $80,000 in legal fees and half a year of intense anxiety. 2 months later, a failed investor sued me, claiming I had legally promised him more capital. That lawsuit dragged on for a year and cost me another $400,000. My lawyer told me this was completely normal. The rich are the ultimate targets, and building settlement traps has become an entire industry. I had to install a heavy security system with cameras and motion sensors, and even hired a full time security guard. Now, there was a stranger guarding my car just to protect me from other strangers. I constantly received vague, knacker threats via email and letters claiming they knew where I lived and described my driving habits. Even though my security advisor said most of them were harmless, every single time I walked to the driver's seat, I couldn't help but look back in fear. In the fifth year, my financial manager and I sat down to review the remains of my $118 million fortune, and I stared in absolute shock to see that the number had plummeted to just $41 million. The reckless investments, the lawsuits, the gifts, the donations, and the lavish lifestyle had decimated my assets. Yet my spending habits were old fashioned and still structured for someone with triple that amount. The mansion was heavily burdened with loans and property taxes. The cars required expensive insurance and care, and the monthly upkeep costs were enough to drive most small enterprises bankrupt. I tried to downsize and desperately sold off my resort property at a massive loss because the market had slumped. I dissolved the security company, but the debt had already exceeded its limit. The final blow came when my accountant revealed that due to an old real estate transaction from years ago, a tax had been improperly hidden. I now owed the tax office $2.8 million in extra fines and interest. The people I trusted didn't know, or perhaps they knew and never told me. I fired my accountant, but the new one only uncovered more corruption and audit problems. The financial kingdom I built was completely collapsing. Everyone began to leave. My money manager jumped to another firm. My lawyer transferred my account to a junior partner because my asset size no longer justified his hourly rates. And my fitness coach stopped answering my calls. They all vanished the moment the money stopped flowing. 8 years after the prize was awarded, the money wasn't just low, it was completely gone. Every last cent went to the tax office, lawyers, settlement fees, and maintaining a failing lifestyle. I was forced to sell my house, my cars, my watches, and my furniture. Everything I had bought with pride was sold off in absolute despair. Now, at 42 years old, I rent a tattered apartment that is worse than the place I lived in before the lottery. I drive a broken car worth a few $100s and work in a delivery warehouse, standing on a hard cement floor for 9 hours a day cutting plastic wrap. My back aches, my knees hurt, and my middle-aged body truly feels the toll. Whenever someone in the warehouse starts talking about the lottery, I just keep my head down and continue cutting the wrap. I never mention my past. My mother's house is the only clean, intact thing left, the one thing I don't regret. But she looks at me differently now. She watched me rise and fall, saw me become a total stranger, and now loves me in an unprecedented way, but is utterly unable to help. My brother still refuses to talk to me. He told my mother that I was selfish for running out of money without giving him more, and that accusation sits like a heavy rock in my chest. I donated millions until my hands were bleeding, yet my own brother describes me as selfish. My best friend, the only one who never revealed the secret, is the only one who still answers my phone. On Sundays, I sit in his living room watching basketball. It feels almost normal, except there is a permanent, haunting difference. He has his own stable house and a cautious retirement account. He is still on the steady path that I was torn away from by that ticket. My financial situation is vastly worse than before. Back then, I had $23,000 in debt, but a job that could cover it. Now, my credit rating is under 500. I am buried in debt, and I can't even apply for a credit card or rent a decent apartment unless I have a cosigner. I went from being poor to getting unimaginably rich and right back to being poor. But the second time is infinitely worse because I now know what I've lost. I understand what it feels like to fly first class, to dine at a restaurant without looking at the price, and to hold absolute freedom. And that awareness itself is a relentless torture. I get through each day fueled only by memories. Every time I drive past that old gas station under the same fluorescent lamps, watching people walk in to buy their $2 lottery tickets with a small pocket of hope, my heart breaks. I want so badly to rush in, grab them by the shoulders, and scream a sincere warning, don't buy it. But they won't listen. I have to be careful because they will just laugh and I will sound like a lunatic, a man driving you a broken car telling strangers not to look forward to a better life. The bitter fact is, the money was the simplest part. What is truly complicated is how money completely rewrites every relationship around you. It takes away trust. It gives you the material things you once wanted, but stealthily strips away the psychological pieces you actually needed. And when the money finally leaves, you are left standing in the ruins of your own life. At this very moment, somewhere out there, someone is standing at a gas station counter paying $2 for a lottery ticket. They are imagining mansions, fast cars, and freedom. They are imagining the happy face of their mother. They have no idea that the ticket is not a gift, but a volatile firework, and that everything they touch from this moment on will eventually be destroyed. They will understand soon enough, they will understand, and the cycle will repeat itself.